Hi everyone, welcome back to Yasmin's Q&A. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I just want to remind and let everyone know my channel is not political, although we talk about highly politicized things. I want us all to focus on the individual person that I am talking to, not as the large agenda, because that's not what it is. I want everyone to remember it is a very sensitive time in our lives, I believe in everybody's lives. So let's keep all comments and things with the basis of being respectful and kind. With that said, this is part 2 with Sharmel, and what a wonderful conversation. I am really happy that she sat down and did this with me. In this video, we talk about identity still, stunted growth. We discuss, passive aggressive behaviors that, we put up with often, altering our behaviors to make other people comfortable. But one that really got me is the word tolerate. I want everybody to kind of think about that when you're watching this video, that we still use a word that we also use to identify things like we have zero tolerance for drug use at a job. We have zero tolerance for abuse. So it's such a heavy word to also be used when describing an interaction with a person. These are all things, these words that we use, these interactions are still very prevalent in our culture, in American culture. These things I find also hold us back. We just, at the end of the video, she just talks about a trigger that she had. And I really started thinking about that. We often don't think about the family members of those individuals who leave the home to go to work, to go to wherever they need to go, that are being profiled, that are likely to have problems with authority just for being themselves. Well, we should start thinking about the families that also suffer from these things. We talk about people in other countries, we talk about wars, but we have our own individuals that on a daily basis suffer from anxiety, and their family members suffer from anxiety and triggers of simple acts of leaving their homes. So, with that said, remember to keep it kind. If you have comments, if you have topics you want to discuss, let me know. Hey, I am so ready and happy to have these conversations. So, with that said, here is part 2 with Sharmel.
So I don't think that it has anything to do with growing up in a predominantly white community. I think that me choosing to be as level-headed as possible is a me thing, because I don't like when other people control my emotions. So if somebody gets me out of my character, then I'm mad at myself because I let them get me out of my character. Right. So I think more so it taught me how to maneuver amongst white people, let's say, because it was predominantly white. But I will say I also think it stunted my growth, because here I am, just realizing that, was I really who I thought I was when I was younger, or was I just putting on to make white people comfortable?
I'm telling you, 35, and I know it all of a sudden. Like,
right.
But in my defense, it's been a long journey finding my dad and connecting with that side and understanding it better. And, I went from Europe to Hinesville, Georgia, which gave me scars because, the way I look and then not speaking English, kind of off-putting to everyone who's ever met me back then.
Right.
But then going to Oregon, right? And I have all these biases of experiences I had in Georgia, and then coming here, and then finding my father and talking to my aunts, and then hearing their Southern culture and my uncles and cousins and seeing how close they all are. It's like, okay, well, me and my siblings who are growing up with the other side. So what triggered the growth now? Like, for me, like I said, it was finding my father, hearing the stories, and this is why I think a lot of our culture is being messed up too, is especially for us that don't have the 3-4 generations in the home and live with the cousins and hear those stories. I feel like verbal history is missing, and that was a big part of our culture. Big
Right.
part of when you get your hair braided, it's the stories, it's the feeling comfortable, it's the this is why. And by the way, anyone who's in Gresham, Oregon and needs their hair done, uh, what is it, Hair Heaven?
Hair Haven. Yeah, yeah.
Go see our buddy
100%.
Tanisha. Yes, know her for years,
Mm-hmm.
and she's on it. But having those places, we missed out on that. At least I did. And
I meant that, sorry, go ahead.
and now finding that and hearing the stories from my aunts and learning our history, like, dude, we own the acres of the shack that my family, like, that just brings history so much more to life. What do you mean you lived in a shack and and it was like, what do you mean? It sounds terrible. And they're like, well, no, considering the conditions, like, we were off well. What do you mean you were off well? Right? Like, and that's where I feel privileged, because I'm like, I'm so removed from that. What do you mean you felt like that's okay? Or I remember one of my first conversation with my aunts, and she was saying that they had lived next to the neighbor for, 20 plus years. And when my grandmother passed away, the daughter, like, secretly came and brought a card because it was still not okay. And I'm like, what do you mean they tolerate you? You know, you tolerate me. Either you like me or you don't. Like, that really got me. Like, tolerate. My aunt's like, okay, baby. And I'm like, no, not okay. Not okay at all. And she's like, and I've had somebody say this to me too. They're like, oh yeah, you were raised by a white woman.
Right.
And I'm like, how is that a thing? Because I'm angry about this, but just hearing these things, and like you said, it hasn't been that long. Like, these are women in their, late 60s, early 70s, and who have really lived life that we luckily at this point don't experience to the extent that they have, but kind of, I feel like we're trying to revert back.
Yeah, I will say that it's more subtle now, like sometimes subtle, sometimes real abrupt, but it's more subtle. I find that especially in Oregon, people will say things
undertones in Oregon.
Oh yeah, the passive aggressive. I'm gonna say something just offensive enough and just enough for you to question whether or not you're going crazy, whether or not I said what I said, whether or not I said what you think I said. I'm gonna say it, and then when you call me on it, I'm gonna say, no, that's not what I meant.
Or I was just,
what did you mean? Right. So it's so like the microaggressions, the passive aggression. So I did have those stories, and I experienced some of that. I remember being in Northeast Portland when I was little. I don't know what age, multiple times actually it's happened. And
you went to Lloyd Center, huh?
My mom would have no, I was over off of like Alberta. My grandmother lived off.
I was always told, don't go to Prescott in 20 years.
Oh my God. But my grandparents lived off of 18th and Emerson for a while, between Killingsworth and Alberta.
Oh yeah, don't go there.
Yeah, and we went all the time. So I had a close relationship with all of my cousins and my aunts and uncles, and the gangs were big in Portland back then, and we would get pulled over all the time because my brothers were in the car, or because I had cousins in the car, and they would pull my mom over multiple times, telling her she had oh, you didn't use your blinker, oh, you have a headlight out, and there's no headlight out. They just to pull them, or just pulling them over because they match the description. What's the description? Black and male?
Black guy.
Right, black male. That was it. And so, there was the being pulled over and, things like that. I mean, so many things. Yeah, so I did get to hear those stories. I was around for a lot of it. I was aware of a lot of it. But just kind of like you, where you said you experienced it from both sides, you weren't black enough, you weren't white enough, had nothing to do with me being mixed, because I'm not mixed. I do have Native American, it's my dad's half, but that's beyond the point. Like, people don't look at me and say she's a black woman. So I wasn't black enough because of how I talked and how I was.
I was going to say, your mannerisms.
And where I lived. So it was, you know, I would get that too, but not for the same reasons, not entirely for the same reasons that you do. And then
And yet you were raised by an amazing Black woman who's behind you, who has always had a very strong personality, as I remember, and kept us all in line and had jokes for days.
right.
Jokes
So
for days.
for days, she still got jokes for days. But you know, I watched my brothers go through things, and my older brother struggled with identity issues when he was young. I have another relative, not from my side of the family, but that also had those same identity issues because they were young and they were in white schools and they were being teased about their noses and their lips, who didn't want to be Black. Like, just, you know, as a little kid, I mean, I even check my nieces and nephews now, and I see, I kind of pay attention to when they see a character on TV, like who's their favorite character, like who do they feel like not they relate to, but in terms of looks even, because what happens is and nothing wrong with, being with anybody that is not of the same skin color as you by any means, but when they're that young, I look and I know part of it is because of who they're surrounded by. Like both of my brothers, they don't date Black women at all. Like it, but I think that this is just my personal opinion. I think sometimes when it's a not self-hate by any means, but that's what with the Black community, that's what we're dealing with sometimes too, is we're dealing with like we haven't fully dealt with our issues with ourselves. We haven't dealt with the Jim Crow and the weight that it takes, knowing that there are still so many people in the world that tolerate you, like your aunt said, that tolerate you, but don't really want you. Like you're not really being accepted. You're not accepted.
I'm big on vibes. I feel your vibes. And you can tell me one thing and I know you feel a different way. And I'm not the only one. And it's prevalent in our culture as African Americans that we can read bodies and vibes like nobody's business, whether we admit it or not. But that also goes to survival. So you can tell these gentlemen whatever you want, but they feel how you truly feel about them. And it's hurtful, it's frustrating, and it's kind of to where we go to self-destruction. And going back to what you were saying, as being livestock and being treated worse than livestock, and the dehumanization and humiliation, it goes, it's still in us today. And in my opinion, that has a long way. Granted, y'all live in Germany, but I know there's Black people in Germany because we all came from Germany.
Right. It's sorry, I'm trying to get this in a good position here. That is a definite issue, and I think that what do they call it? Generational curses.
Yeah.
We haven't dealt with those generational curses, and that is one of them.
Well, I'm here to deal with it. This is why I got the platform.
Right. Seriously, like generational curses.
This is why I created this, because we need to talk. There needs to be a bridge, because the way things are going right now, we need to look at each other as individuals. And nobody's giving us the platform to connect, to listen. And these videos, you can turn it off if it's too much for you. You can pause it, you can move on, you can ask questions as long as they're respectful. Anybody you got a question, let's talk. You got some. I will actually put a book in the links below of from Alexander. I'm going to look it up real quick, but it's called The New Jim Crow. And it's about what you're talking about. It's about the pipeline to prison. It's about our school system. It's about what Jim Crow was about. And it's written by a Black woman who is a lawyer, I believe. And her name is Alexandra. I will look it up and put it in the links. But yeah, I feel like I've always felt like this was my part of my journey, though, was that eventually I was going to have to speak up. All these experiences that we're going through, I was meant to go through so that I can open my mouth. So I'm not going to be silent because I feel like everyone's been silent for so long, and that's part of the problem.
Right. So I don't know when we're going to wrap this up, and I'm not rushing by any means because I like to talk about this, but I listened to an interview, and I started to say this earlier, but then I got sidetracked. Oh, who was it? Not Dr. Cornell West. Oh, it'll come back to me. But the conversation, it was the interview. He was on a radio station interview with the Breakfast Club, and he was saying how, like, what do you do with, I don't even know how many of us Black people, African American in particular, are here in the United States. What do you do with all these Black people that you don't want, but you can't go out and like execute them in the street? Not in mass quantities, not the way
Send
that
them to privatized prisons, and you do
send them
modern
to
day
privatized
slavery.
prisons.
Let them
By
destroy
making
themselves.
the smallest of charges. First of all, not a fair due process.
Oregon has some of the craziest
So,
laws there are.
And then all of the biases when it comes to the judges and sentencing of Black people versus non-Black people. But so what do? You mass incarcerate them. You get them to poison themselves through their food and through liquor. You put a liquor store on every corner, especially in predominantly Black communities. You get them to poison themselves. You get them to kill one another. And like I said, mass incarceration. You leave them not uneducated, but you don't give them
the right education.
the right education. Like, that's what you do. If you want to get rid of people, you help them get rid of themselves. And that is what happens. That is what is happening. That is what has happened forever.
Yeah. So speaking on that, so the author is Michelle Alexander, and the book is The New Jim Crow and Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. And it's a powerful book. My friend Michael introduced me to this book, and him and his beautiful girlfriend are in Arizona, and hopefully he will come on here one day and discuss some of his experiences, because they are horrific. It's not my story to tell, and he's also a mixed person, but still, even as a mixed male, has gone through some horrific things. And but this book touches on that. Like, what do you do? Yeah, you incarcerate, you self-destruct. My dad's favorite saying is, you can't, other countries can't come in and destroy us. If you want to destroy something or someone, you let them destroy themselves from within.
Yep.
How do you do that? Like you said, liquor store on every corner. Liquor isn't good for anybody's system. They call it spirits for a
horrible
reason.
grocery stores, the minimal access to like fresh foods.
Yeah, like making McDonald's cheap.
Make McDonald's cheap and plenty of them.
Yes.
Like, seriously, like, let them kill themselves. So that blood is not on our hands.
Kool-Aid, I know it was fun to dye our hair when we were younger with it, but think about my kids don't know what Kool-Aid are. And it's like, I realized though that, some members of my family are like, what do you mean the kids have never had Kool-Aid? No, no, they will not as long as I can control what they're drinking. I mean, granted, we are currently during this pandemic on a high sugar rush. Yes, I'm not gonna lie, I've been lax on, but certain things like Agent Orange and the red coloring and all these things have been proven to have affected the cognitive process, hypersensitivities, and ADHD. All these things come from these colors, these high fructose corn syrup, all these things. And yes, you can call me a hippie, you can call me whatever you want. Yes, I'm still partly raised in Oregon. Yes, I know what organic is, okay?
Oh, trust me, my husband, he got all kinds of funny stories. Well, not funny stories, but he in terms of being from Oregon and being slightly hippie myself. He's got all the stories and he's into it though, but it's just funny. It's funny.
No, Portlandia does not completely tell you about our culture, okay? That has been ruined by other people coming in. Okay?
Right.
Yes, we may own chickens and we may do these certain things, but we don't look that ridiculous, okay?
Right.
I'm good at bashing Oregon, but let me tell you, I also know the fundamentals of being healthy that we learned growing up where we grew up.
Because of being here.
Because of being where we grew up, the Northwest, having the forests around us, playing in the outside because we did have fresh air. We did have
understanding
wildlife.
Food that's not fried all the time.
Yes. I still do not like fried chicken and all that. Like, get it.
I like fried chicken. I like certain fried chicken. I can't eat all fried chicken. But there's no lie. This is like so off subject, but there is a place here in Portland, in Northeast Portland. And it's a convenience store. It's like a Minute Mart, like a corner store. And they have the best fried chicken ever. Like some people are like, oh, I went to the screen door, and I had their fried chicken.
Oh, the screen door. Like, yeah.
Go to Jack's Chicken. But
by the way, anybody in Portland and Northeast, go visit the Pocket Pub too. My friend owns it.
Wait, the what?
The Pocket Pub.
Oh, nice. Where's that at?
I will look it up. It's in Northeast Portland. I'll put the link in the bottom later. But yes, my buddy owns it, and they're amazing, and the food is delicious and fresh. And if anyone deserves to survive this pandemic, it is definitely these two women who have put their all into this. And yeah, so Pocket Pub, everyone. I am plugging that.
Nice.
And yes, the screen door is good too. Honestly, there's a lot of things, and I'm sad that the food carts are gone from Division Street. Whoever did that, screw you. That's messed up. Yes. Because remember, they had them in that free space, and then they had like tables in the middle, and they would play black and white movies on certain nights. All gone.
Of those.
They were like on 39th, before 39th or after, but it was like in lower southeast. Hawthorne, yeah, they had good ones too. Whatever happened to those? Are they still there?
They're from Foster, and people got breaking into them before the pandemic even. On Foster and like okay, so that's like 70th and Foster. Never mind. I don't know the division cards.
And for the record, I haven't been in Oregon in a while, so I could be wrong. Those places could still be there or resurfaced. I don't know. But anyone who wants to share some things like good food and places that need to be supported because they're local.
Right. And there's small businesses. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot of small businesses in Oregon.
I had a discussion with the neighbor where I live now in California about, people being nervous about rioters coming in and destroying businesses. And we had this discussion about how I am not going to put my life down for no daggone Walmart and Target. Like, let them close. I'm good with that. But I would say something on a local business that my neighbor owns, a restaurant that I know, my neighbors have put their life savings into. I will protect that. I am totally for community and community businesses. I'm just not for mass marketing.
Right. And when it comes to the writing too, like,
by the way, nothing happened to my town. Everybody was scared for nothing.
Right. I have the ability to understand and see things from multiple perspectives. So I understand why some people are angry. Like, well, everybody's angry, but why some people are angry to the point where they're being destructive. Right. I also understand if there are people that are opportunistic, so it doesn't matter what the cause is, they're going to go out and wreak havoc on communities. I understand that. And especially here in Oregon. And I know, unfortunately, okay, I'll be honest, I don't understand the actual organization Black Lives Matter. So when I've had multiple people say, oh, Black Lives Matter, like they're referring to organization, and they say, oh, the movement. And I'm like, this isn't a movement for me. I'm Black every day, and my life matters. And the Black people around me, their lives matter too. So it's not a movement for me. It's my life every day, all day, 365 for the last 35 years. So it's not a movement. I don't understand the organization. I'll be honest, I didn't do the research to understand it because I don't have to associate with an organization in order to say Black Lives Matter. So, and so I know a lot of people are like, oh, Black Lives Matter, people, whatever. Like, some of those people out there rioting have nothing to do with any organization. Again, they're opportunistic.
But that's on all sides. That is on
On
all
all
sides.
sides, on all sides. I mean, because there have definitely been groups of non-Black people in particular who have rioted over baseball games and football games and basketball.
Okay. State of Oregon freaking had people take over, what was it, one of the government buildings with
Yeah.
AK-47s. Okay, we know where we come from.
Right, right. So,
and they were not Black. They were not minorities.
Right. So when people are, so the thing that was getting me when people would post about, you know, if you were so enraged and outraged about the rioting, but you didn't comment on you didn't have a stance or anything to say about people being killed on live television. Now, let me just clear this up. I am pro-police just as much as I am Black lives, right? And all lives. But just like with in life period, I judge people on an individual basis. So I know that there are good cops. I have friends that are police officers. I have relatives that are police officers, right? So let's just clear that up. I think that people assume that when you say defund, which defund isn't a good word anyway, because it's reform.
Trigger word.
So taking the money. So this is, and I was watching something else recently. Defunding, but then refunding. So you defund and then you
redistributed the funds into other things
where it needs to go, so that police officers aren't out there handling mental health crisis when they're not trained to do so. So that money can be put towards having the resources available to get people that are actually trained in mental health to go out there and handle those calls. So that people that are not trained are not out there dealing with the mental health calls and, you know, et cetera. So it is not a defund and take away the police entirely. It is reform it.
Well, in my opinion, also, let's face it, for instance, in my current community, I'm lucky enough to get to have officers who live in my community, whose wives and children are part of my community. And
a lot of my clients are wives of are officers and are like, and a lot of my clients are either officers or they have wives or spouses that come to my work that are my clients.
And there is something comforting knowing that, even for instance, if I got pulled over here, or I've had to you know, interact with police here before on various through my job and stuff. But even hearing my child, you know, recognizing the police officer that drives by and she's like, oh, I know officer so and so, and we wave, and it's like, unfortunately, what I don't think people are understanding is in a lot of these communities, those aren't officers who live in that community. These are people that are coming in to regulate people they don't know, that they don't understand. They don't understand the rhythm of the community. They don't understand the people. They don't know what's going on. So hearing the word defund is like, how about we bring it back to localizing? Let's keep the officers who live in these communities in those communities, because they're going to de-escalate situations quicker. Because, oh, George over there, George, now we know daggone well you should not be doing this, sir, or you know, I understand you had a really bad day today. I heard about your mom. Is your mom okay? Or like that personal relationship.
Right.
We're lucky enough to have them, and yes, it's because I live in a more upper middle class neighborhood. I live in a very good community, and we are privileged enough to have these relationships with our officers.
Right.
Are our officers all good? No, you know, I'm pretty sure there's some neighbors that have different experiences.
Right.
But I feel like people that are getting triggered with the defunding and stuff, in my opinion, once again, my channel is not political. It's just us talking about our opinions and the way we feel. Like she said, you know, you have family members who are officers, so you're for that too. Yeah, but I also understand the fear. And like I said at the beginning, this brings me right back to domestic violence shelters. Okay? You got to live it to understand the culture. Living on the street, you got to understand what street like. They have certain codes amongst on how they civilize with each other, how they interact. and a outsider coming in will not understand this. Something that seems very abrupt to you or very disrespectful or just a little crazy could have been a system that was put in place by the local people who live there or who are experiencing certain things to keep themselves protected, to keep themselves together. So redistributing funds for, like you said, mental health. After this pandemic, mental health needs to go up twice as much. Are you kidding me? Everybody is going to have mental health issues to some extent. We're pretty much being locked up in our own homes, with the fear of many fears.
And even with the policing and police work in general has a dark connotation, especially for janky ceiling, but a dark connotation for people of color.
Because we were property at one point, and police in the day were there to retrieve your property, to protect your property. So
to go after slaves. They were to go after slaves, and so that is where that history came from. And so what is being said actually is that it was policing in itself was founded in racism. Like that is the foundation. A lot of those people, if it's 69, if again, Ruby Bridges is 69 years old now, and she was integrated until the first person to be integrated into a white school. The system that not even just policing, our system period was founded in racism. So the very foundation of this country is founded in racism. And yes, some things have been tweaked and moved around over the years, but that definitely was not without taking into consideration. People will say, oh, it's for the majority. Well, the majority is not Black. So it has always been made to be a system where certain groups profit or certain groups get the best of it, and anybody else that might get some benefit from it, just you got it by default because you happen to be here. That's it. And that that's really it. And so when it comes to policing, it has a dark history, like so many things do in this country. But we're still dealing with the good old boys. There's still good old boys in the police force who sometimes flock to those positions of power.
There is a certain type of personality that is attracted to police work and military and things like that. For sure. Not everyone. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying it's always a bad thing.
Right.
But it is a certain type of person, and I'm pretty sure when you're taking those tests, there's a certain personality type that thrives.
Right.
And some of those, personality types abuse it, and some of them, thrive because they can stomach more than others. But there's definitely a bro culture.
Right.
There's definitely, a clique type culture. And if you blackballed, I was cold-shouldered, or same with the military. And no, I'm not knocking anybody. I come from a military family. I have highly respect for soldiers.
Yeah, even
in there, they've had to, put up with a lot.
Even then, there's discrimination there. Like, I didn't even realize, which I can't even believe I didn't realize this, that back when they had the GI Bill and not even the GI Bill, but the GI Bill. So Black men went out to fight in the wars thinking that they would get the same benefits when they came back from war, like Vietnam War in particular. And they did not get those benefits when they came back.
But just for the record, us as a country, we're not treating our vets well at all anymore. Now it's like a general pot, and it's embarrassing. I'm going to say it. In my opinion, it's embarrassing that some of the way our vets have to live. Because PSD is no joke. Stress-induced, we sent them over there to do terrible things. And then now we don't want to take care of them. Once again, mental health is important, and it's always
Mm-hmm.
been a taboo.
Yep.
Always been a taboo, and it shouldn't be.
It's gaining more light, though. I know that much, as more people are like
Affected, like I said, after
affected,
this,
and also acknowledging it,
right?
acknowledging it, and you know, being forthcoming about it versus like hiding from it. It's like, because it doesn't matter how much you try to hide, it's still going to be there. Like, you know, some cases worse than others, that's for sure. And it's, you know, that's a whole nother thing when you go into, you break it down to like communities and how it's accepted or not accepted, or it's getting, that is getting better though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before we go, though, I always ask somebody, do you have a, like, I'm going to add the book from Michelle Alexander in the bottom, but any books that you want to recommend that you have enlightened you or you feel are important for somebody listening to this? I know that I've read some bell hooks in Black studies. You know, there's also various, like the Langston Hughes stories, those kind of, you know, those kind of books. But any modern books that you like or that
I
have?
don't have any, like, honestly, the last book I read like more recently was by Ta-Nehisi Coates, I think it's Tana.
Oh, Marie, the one on feminism.
No,
or which
this one was on this one is called, oh my goodness, what is it called? Water Dancer.
Okay, well, I'll find the link and I'll put it in.
It has nothing to do with current events per se, but it is from a slave perspective, and it is fictional, but there is a lot of truth in there. But I mean, I wouldn't, if people want to read it, that's great. I wouldn't necessarily say that I recommend it. A lot of my insight comes from interviews that I've watched. It comes from talking to people. It comes from like my grandparents. Like my grandmother is well, she's passed away now, but she's a retired school teacher in Indiana. So and my dad's side of the family in particular are really big on Black history and like knowing where you come from. So a lot of my knowledge comes from that. I read a lot of like, you know, grade school age like biography books. So I did have that access when I was younger, and I did have that them kind of keeping me in the loop with that. But yeah, I can't say that I have any particular books to read. And honestly, all the racial stuff, like particularly as a Black person, like that does not, it always is there. It's always in the back of your head. It doesn't go away. So I try not to read anything or watch anything that's going to trigger me. So I've tried
real quick before we go, triggers.
Yeah. I didn't watch the George Floyd video. I didn't. I saw the still image, and I didn't watch it.
I haven't watched the movie Precious till this day. I haven't watched 12 Slaves. I cannot watch any of those things.
Nope. Haven't watched it.
The Color Purple we did on stage, me and my daughter, but the actual movie, cannot watch it.
Right.
There's a lot of
I watched that when I was younger and before I was super triggered. But quick story before we go. My husband was I just started at a new office, and I'm starting my own massage practice. And
oh, by the way, if you have a website, let me know, and I will also add it so that people know how to contact you. Just after this, let me know, and I will add all that too.
For sure. So I had to go to work that morning, and my husband was driving with me because I was driving a smaller vehicle. He was driving the bigger truck that we have so that he could bring some of my office furniture to my job for me. And so we took separate cars, and I realized the car next to me was an unmarked police car. And I didn't realize that it was Washington plates and we're in Oregon, so they weren't actually on duty, but I didn't know that yet. I just saw that it was an unmarked police car, and I saw the CAD system and the laptop and stuff in the car, so I knew it was an undercover officer. Well, my husband had gotten back over into the right lane, so now I'm behind the officer, and my husband gets over into the passing lane, and he sped up just to like get in front of the other car because it's a passing lane, because he was having trouble getting over where I was at. So anyway, I'm seeing him speed up, and My heart's racing. I'm freaking out. I was actually honking my horn, knowing he couldn't even hear me because we're on the highway and there's a ton of cars. And I'm honking my horn because there was this fear that like he was going to get pulled over, he was going to be looked at as a threat, and something was going to happen to him. And he didn't know at the time that I was freaking out. And I told him later, like as much as he worries about me when I'm away from home, like that like really hit me. And I didn't realize how really triggered and how traumatized I was from everything that's going on until that happened on the highway. And obviously everything was fine, but still that innate, like that fear that he was gonna be pulled over and seen as a threat, or it was gonna be an officer that wasn't comfortable interacting with people of color and was gonna see him as, because that's part of it, you know, there is a fear when they see people of color, when they see Black people, and a fear that automatically that, you know, the hand's on the gun already, or they've already taken a stance before they've ever actually found out what was going on. And so that was just a little tidbit about like how I was freaked out about that in particular, as it pertains to him. But yeah.
So it's kind of heightened with everything going on right now.
Yeah.
Everyone is scared.
But I didn't realize it until that day, and because I tend to be more of a I tend to kind of bottle things up more. I'm not super. It's not a good thing that I bottle it up, but I do, and I don't think I really and I don't think I realized how bad I was actually triggered by that, and how traumatized really by everything that's been going on. So that was kind of a tough one, you know, and being just 3 years into marriage and not having dated for much longer than that even, you know, definitely triggered, and definitely things that you don't expect to encounter in a marriage or relationship, like encountering things like that. Like that's not something you think of when you decide to be with somebody, you know, that, oh, I might, you know, have to worry about you leaving the house and the people that are supposed to protect and serve you, you know, might look at you as a threat and, you know, act on that threat. So,
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people aren't thinking about either when they're out there fighting for, you know, what buzz or trigger word to use. But the families. And then this goes for both. I'm not saying that, you know, officers' wives or husbands aren't sitting at home worried.
Right. And I feel bad for them too.
But I must emphasize this though, it is a career choice.
It is.
You can take that uniform off and you are a everyday civilian when you do not have that uniform on. And I think people are forgetting that your husband cannot take off his skin. He can change his clothes, but that's still I mean, you know.
Go to sleep Black, you wake up Black.
So, and that's kind of the point where I think some are missing the severity of the situation. Yes, when you put on that uniform right now, I believe it is heightened and you probably are fearing many people and many things, but you can take that off and you can't take skin off. And this is not a new fear. This fear has now just become even worse because of the situations and the social environment. And unfortunately, I think, and this is why I created this channel, is because I think we need to come back to realizing we're all individual people and that we don't really have to follow the mass. We don't have to make everything political. And we can like literally just learn from each other's stories and our insights and things we've experienced as people, as individuals. Like you were saying, you know, your husband's learning stuff about you and from the things that you've learned growing up in Oregon that he wasn't aware of growing up where he grew up. And it's those little things. It's the we're human and humanizing each other. And I've had to, I've had my moments where I had to be checked, where, people were like, hey, remember, police officers too. Don't get caught up in that. You have friends and family who either have done some sort of police work or have been in the military, or, you know. So just remember, don't do what you are saying you don't want others to do to you, which is dehumanizing you.
Right, and it's also very much so oh, hold on, or maybe my sister got it, but it also is it's not like when we said this already, all police officers are bad type of thing. It is, if you are a good cop and you got into law enforcement for all the right reasons, check them.
Be that nail that sticks up.
Yeah, check them. And if more of you, I know that there are more, I truly believe there are more good officers than there are bad. But like they say, if there are 100 good officers, sorry, hold on. Oh, goodness. Anyhow, just because, so if there are 100 good officers, 100 officers there, and 99 of them are good, but one of them is bad, and that bad one acts out, and those other 99 don't check that one, then you got 100 bad officers. Like, and that's the thing. So if an officer is afraid to check another officer, knowing that the other officer was in the wrong, and they're too afraid to check that officer, then that should tell you there's something wrong with our system.
Yeah.
If you're afraid to check that officer because you might be reprimanded for it, then you should be out here not protesting, but you should be calling that out as well. And you should know there's something wrong. Our system is broken. If you don't even yourself feel comfortable calling it out and checking the officers that are being too rough or, doing those things. And that's the problem. That's the heartbreaking part, because again, usually I imagine people don't act out. They don't do anything about it or go to the higher ups, the sergeant or whatever, because they're afraid. And that's the problem. You shouldn't be afraid to go.
Feed.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's a problem. So.
Yay! Thank you for talking to me, Sharmel.
Sure.
We should do this more often. I'm realizing how little I have been interacting with my people in general. So once again, thank you for coming on this and having this conversation with me. Anyone who has questions for Sharmel, feel free to put them in the comments, and as long as they're respectful, I'm pretty sure she has no problem answering them, or we can do a follow-up, or but I definitely appreciate that you're being so honest and that you would come on here. I know it's not easy, and I know that I sometimes feel really awkward and weird, but I appreciate that you would come on and talk to me, because I feel like I myself, like I said in the last video with Marie, it's for me to heal. But if others are healing with me, sweet, I love it. Yeah. But I feel like I needed to come back to my little roots and to talk to people that I grew up with, that would understand the culture that I grew up with in Portland. And it's been really nice to see that you guys are willing to come on here and talk to me, and it's kind of making me feel better and less crazy and more well-rounded, because I'm like, look, from all sides. And I have everybody on here, white, black, mixed. I mean, so far it's been quite a nice mix, and it's been awesome to see that we all come from the same community. We all have different views on certain things, but it's nice to see that we can still come together and have cordial conversations, and it doesn't have to be this whole trigger happy buzzword and major stance. That we can sit here and remember who we are as people. And I feel like part of this journey for me, and why I created this, was because I needed to remember who I was before I was an adult. I needed to remember what it was like to be us when we were 12, 10, 11, and when we were in these communities together, and remembering that just because we don't live in the same areas anymore and we're grown-ups and we have our own lives, it's nice to see that, hey, it's okay to be different and still get along. It's okay not to
Right.
have the same views.
Right.
As long as you're not hurting any of us,
Right.
it's okay. And it's okay to ask questions. Once again, we tell our kids, we tell our nieces, nephews, and everyone else, there is no dumb question, and the only dumb one is the one you didn't ask.
Right.
That comes with boundaries, though.
Right.
If you're coming from a place of malice, then yeah, don't ask that, because you know you're coming from a place of malice.
Yep. Yep. You know
But
your intent.
yeah, but if your intent is just like, I just don't freaking get it. I understand everybody's mad, but I don't know why. Hopefully some of these videos will help you understand. Maybe some of the books that people recommend you will pick up one day and read, you know. In this case, you don't necessarily recommend it, but I'll find it anyway. The Coates, we had that author before. One of our other friends, Marie, recommended a book from that author in the last video, so I'm fine with that. But I really appreciate it. So thank you, Sharmel, for coming on here and being the awesome you that you are.
Yeah. And read The Power. It has nothing to do with
Power.
racism.
Okay.
But it's about women and women, the power of a woman. So that's
okay. I'll put that in there.